and welcome back to Legacy of Leaders, where we interview the brightest and most interesting leaders in the community, and today is no different. I'm your host, Whitney Mincey, joined by a very special guest, Ms. Della from Girls of Virtue. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here today because your mission and everything that drives Girls of Virtue is just so close to my heart, and I love everything you're doing. So for those that have not heard of Girls of Virtue, tell me a little bit about it.
So we are a program here in town. Our mission is to create a community where we are empowering and equipping the next generation of women to be grounded spiritually, mentally, physically, financially through mentorship and education.
That's incredible. And you've got a special way that you do it with 4 pillars, right? So tell me about that.
So it started when I kind of started praying through the idea to give young women vocational trades. And statistically, if I was to take 5 young women, and that was the original number that we wanted to help, and if I gave them a vocational trade coming out of high school, I could drastically shift the trajectory of their young adult life. If they made enough money to not be stuck into abusive relationships, they could afford for doctors or accountants or lawyers, like whatever you need to be able to do the things you're trying to do.
Right.
And, you know, to be able to financially afford to live in a safe space. And statistically, if all I did was give them a vocational trade, 1 of 5 would have succeeded. Or at least that's what the Lord told me. He's like, you know, you got to do something different. So I just asked, what am I supposed to do different? I don't know. I didn't even think I could get 5. Like, it was my tithe when I launched my first company in 2020.
Right.
So I was already a really big stretch goal. I didn't even think I could get that. But he told me a couple things. He said, 1, I need to love on them younger. So the idea was originally 17 to 24, vocational trades, young adults. He said, if you'll shift that number if you start loving on them younger. And then he told me that they needed some strong pillars. And I began to reflect on the things that were different in my life in my 30s that I didn't have in my late teens and early 20s. And it came down to 4 things. Spirituality. I really had a deep understanding of what did it mean that God made me for a purpose. That every bit of my story, every bit of my journey was growing me into the woman that I needed to be. And it was less about why is this happening to me and became more about what am I supposed to learn. I knew that God had made me for a purpose. Like, my identity was tied to him, not my job, not a man, all the things.
Right.
I had really leaned into mental health. So I had started to study what did it mean and why do we do the things we do and what does it look like to set healthy boundaries and communicate effectively, do conflict well. Especially if you come from a family that don't do conflict well. Like, we yelled. I just didn't do it well. So I started looking at that. I was really good at health and nutrition. So I had become a runner. I started chasing the wall, realizing that if I could push the boundaries in fitness, I could push the boundaries in business because I was more confident in my ability to do so. I began to see the difference of health as a whole. You know, what does it mean to, you know, sleep well, exercise well, eat non-processed, good, whole food. And then I had a good understanding of what does it mean to manage my home. You know, we still teach our kids how to identify rocks. And like I said, I'm kind of a runner. So I would travel around the world to run on rocks. But I can Google grit, grime, and gravel. I cannot Google the difference between compound and simple interest and how that compares to investments versus credit cards. Or that I'm going to need to understand 3 credit bureaus. So that became our 4th pillar. It's the financial pillar. What does it mean? I call it adulting 101.
So important. Yes.
And that really just kind of became the foundation in which, as long as we knew those things, then you really have a capacity to lean into who God's calling you to be. And kind of, I put it, like, I tell the girls, I want to get you here, and then I want to chase the thing that lights a fire in your soul.
And you mentioned your idea was to start with helping 5 girls. How many girls are you helping now?
2024 to 25 school year that just ended, or is about to end in a few weeks. Our high school outreach alone is over 156 girls.
Oh my gosh.
And that's compounded over the years of how many young women are still continuing to engage with me in some way or another. Like, my first mentee that I met in 2020 brought her new baby to my house on Saturday and sat and loved on me. And her sister is now in part of the young executive pilot that we were running. So compounding wise, there's a ton of them, but it's wild to see compared to that. I just wanted to write a check at the end of the year and pay for 5 vocational trades.
And it's so much more. Tell me a little bit more about the Young Executive Program. We're almost out of time, but what can you share?
So we're in a 3-year pilot. And the pilot was, I picked 5 girls that I said had grit. I was looking for the kid that was willing to put in the work. And a couple of them, had been there for a while, and they were showing up and doing things that you just knew that if they had some support, they'd change. And for the first year, I gave them a mentor. The mentors went through some training, and we told them that we would help them pursue a vocational trade that aligned with their long-term goals. So, and then in year 2, if they proceeded through year 1, we have been giving them one-on-one financial coaching, one-on-one mental health coaching, planning to also give them one-on-one nutrition and kind of health coaching. So we'll pour into the 4 pillars. And then in year 3, you begin to really pour into leadership and the ability of what they need to go back and pour back into the community. So we're halfway through that pilot. We'll be opening applications in 2026 with the plan to launch a full system of this, what I call an executive boot camp. My team said I had to call it an executive life skills program because they said my grant people might not like the boot camp. But the goal is to create the next leaders. You take those kids and you begin to pour into them, and now they've got 4 stable pillars, and that generation wants to help. Like all their heart wants to go and help other kids. So you teach them what they need to know, and then we begin to pour back into the middle schools and high schools. Imagine the generation that's leading in 20 years. If they know good boundaries, good communication skills, how to process trauma and grief, the reduction of suicides within our teachers and our firefighters and our cops and our schools. It drastically begins to change because you've prepared and equipped them proactively instead of reactively.
Well, you're doing so much amazing work. We simply don't have enough time to talk about all of it. So if you want to learn more about Della, Girls of Virtue, and just all of the amazing things that they're doing, make sure you head over to dailynewsnetwork.com. All of her information will be listed there. We will see you next time on Legacy of Leaders.